So back to Rav Ashi's halacha by Rov. Rav Ashi says like this. Let's take the minhag of separating out rice dough. Okay, so Rav Ashi says you have to go around. Let's make up a city that does it. Let's say Tel Aviv. You have to go around finding out if the majority of the people eats rice bread. You understand? If the majority of the people, question is a good question. Why do they this? Why is it necessary here, according to Rav Ashi, to go ahead and find out how many people are holding of it? Okay, Yaakov's question. Ask your question.
How do they know what was Rov or not?
How do they know what was Rov or not? So wouldn't that imply the majority of the people say we like eating rice dough or rice bread?
Yeah.
Which people?
It's 100.
Over 13.
Hamon. Yeah, over 13. Let's say over 13. People who are aware of the
pre-dimension.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think it's such a big deal. Let's say at the local market, you put up a little sign, check mark here if you eat rice bread. So if the majority of the people, now you got to remember, it's not that the majority of people don't accept the minhag. Everybody accepts the minhag, but the question is, do people actually eat rice bread? So if people do not eat, let's say the vast majority do not eat rice bread, so then in that situation, you have the right to uproot the minhag. You have the right to uproot the minhag because you could say, again, Rav Ashi's logic is, remember this, there's a consequence to holding of the minhag, which is what? Remember the consequence?
You can't.
No. What's the consequence? There's a negative side about the minhag of mafresh challah be'orez.
Because then mafresh orez.
Yeah. Right, because you might make a mistake in your halachic observance of mafresh challah. This is what happens when the average Jew gets involved in this process. Their heart's in the right place, but they don't think about the logical consequence. I'm being serious. The Gemara is saying they don't think about the logical consequence, or I should say the halachic consequence of their decision. So it's very nice that you're going ahead and being mafresh challah from orez, but what can end up happening is that, just to summarize the halacha, let's say I have a big, huge batch of 5 big batches of chita dough, of wheat dough. I only have to be mafresh challah from one, a large amount, but on one, and I can tie together the other batches. What's the guy going to do here? He's going to say, oh, well, I'm mafresh from my rice dough. And he's going to say, well, now I have my wheat dough here and my rice dough here. I'll just mafresh from the rice dough, and I should include the wheat dough as well. Can't do that because there's no reality to be mafresh challah from rice dough. The question is, why is that not defined as toast, right? But when they started the minhag, this is what you got to be careful. The Kabbalah and the introduction of the minhag was saying that we want to be more careful when it comes to hafrashas challah, right?
It's just ironic that they opened up.
Right. There's that's not related to the introduction of that minhag. You understand what I mean? In other words, they're not thinking when they create the minhag. They're not thinking ahead of. It's not considered a toast to not think ahead about what the consequences. The ignorance they have in another area of that halachic system is not relevant to the creation of the minhag here. Yes. I just want to focus on one point on this. Rav Ashi is saying that if the majority of the people, right, are rice bread, do not eat rice bread, so then what's halacha? Then you can uproot the minhag. But if the majority of the people do eat rice bread, then you have to leave the minhag as is. So why should that be the case? There's another ingredient that Rav Ashi is adding to this whole thing. Why? But like we said before, if you study Gemaras, you'll see Gemaras don't like doing polls. So why is Rov so important here?
Well, it's because if people were eating the rice,
but you would think Kabbalah, the acceptance of the minhag, is an abstract idea. If people say this is what we want to do, it becomes reality. But the behavior must actually follow the Kabbalah.
If they do it.
Right, exactly. They do. I eat rice bread, therefore I'll be mafresh challah from it. But if the nihug doesn't follow the Kabbalah, it's not a real Kabbalah. So that's why you can uproot it. And that's the other point of Rashi's asking. So that's why Rov is so important. Because you have to. It's not the statistical thing is to determine what's the nihug. You have to see what are people knowing. Do they actually behave in a way where they actually eat rice bread? You understand? If they don't, then it's not considered valid. It starts off by Gufa. We're going to take up some examples of minhagim. All right. Now, to make it easy, there's going to be a big debate about this later on, about what kind of minhagim these are. But for now, let's assume they're not minhag taos. They're hamon minhagim. Nun alf hamon alf, where it says Gufa. It's about a fifth of the way down. Go.
Gufa dvarim hamut.
So just to review that principle, remember, halacha does not like minhag. It tolerates it because if we undermine a minhag, it's going to cause people to be less Right, they'll be mizazel, they'll be less enamored by the halachic system. So the Gemara says, okay, let's discuss this principle. So Amar Rav Chisda, okay, so remember that other thing. The concern we have of the kusai is that what's he going to do if we say your minhag is not a val minhag, he's going to go ahead and be mizaz in other areas, right? Okay, and you would think this applies to the hamon as well.
Also reasons.
For sure, but you think that applies to the average Jew as well, not just the kusai Jew, but every Jew who's basically like on an ignorant level, right? Which is the majority of Jews, especially at that time. So you're concerned, what are they going to do if you undermine this minhag? Okay? So the Gemara says, really? Go. Now comes our cases. You'll love these. The Hatanya.
Hatanya rochzin shnei achin kechad ve'ein rochzin shnei achin bechul.
Close. She explains, halacha is not worried at all about two brothers bathing together. Because what would you be concerned about? Having taken a bath together.
Homosexual relations.
Can I
Well, hold on. No, 1 second. No, it can't be yet because it's going to come up later.
Yeah.
Homosexual incest.
Right, we're not worried about
Why
that.
are you heterosexual incest?
We'll get to that. Hold on, but we're not worried about that. There's no halacha that says two brothers cannot bathe together because you're worried about them having relations with each other. There's no chashash whatsoever. We've got one problem in Kabul. I'm not sure if it's Kabul, Afghanistan, but it was Kabul. In that town, the minhag was what?
Not to
have that happen.
Very from.
Right? Don't worry about the reasons why yet. Okay? Don't worry about you don't have to worry about that yet. But that was the minhag. Right? Big faux pas. Right? They go ahead and do what?
They didn't know.
They took up the faux pas. It means like
the pop part.
PAS. They went against they did something. It'd be like the equivalent of you don't walk into I remember when I took my wife to the symphony, right, when we were first dating. So we went to see Beethoven's Six, which is very rare to get a chance to see one of Beethoven's normative symphonies. But when you go to the symphony, you don't dress in a t-shirt and shorts. It's a faux pas. You don't do that.
If you go to play also, you don't dress
like Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway.
I think people will make about that. But if you go to the symphony, certainly dress nice. If you dress t-shirt and shorts, yeah, it's good. So here, oh my God, they took a bath together. Now, what happened? You got to be sensitive to the lashon. What happens?
V'leiza alehen kol hamadin.
Belaza alein kol medina. What's loes mean?
They descended upon them.
What? No, what? Mock. So we're talking about Yehuda and Hillel, who are two of the most important minds in the history of halacha, and the people in the town were loes. They didn't just say, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" They didn't say that. They said, "Well, what are you, crazy?" Because look what they ask. Amru
Miminu lo re'inu kach.
Yeah, that was second. Miyamenu lo re'inu kach. We never, in all of our days, we never saw two brothers bathing together. Meaning, what's wrong with you guys? They were implying that they're over
An
an isser. Okay. Oh, so what happened?
V'nishmat hello. What does that mean?
He exited. And he left the inner sauna and went to basically the dry off room. Okay.
This is a public bath.
Yeah, that's what it was like then. They didn't have. What do we see? It's a profound. They're loes on Yehuda and Hillel. They said we've never seen brothers bathing together. And what was Hillel's response?
He got up.
He left. He didn't undermine the minhag. Okay, good. So Yaakov already hit the first thing so far. It doesn't. It's not. I wish it was as easy as that. But so far, Yaakov's right. What does this imply? It can't be minhag taos, because there was minhag taos. What would they have to do? They have to tell him, listen, to the minhag, right? Can't be, right? But he didn't. But what's even more crazy about it? You got to be sensitive. What are the people saying? They're loes on them. Loes.
Wasn't that original concern? Oh no.
Meaning this is a legitimate minhag.
Oh, yeah.
This is a legitimate minhag. There's nothing, at this point, they're recognizing, not that it's a positive thing, but they recognize if we go ahead and tell them it's okay to do this, that's going to lead to what? Rechitza situations that are inappropriate. Okay?
Well, just to clarify.
Yotzin
b'kord d'sikin.
Close enough.
Kisim.
B'Shabbos.
Ein yotzin b'kord d'kisim b'Shabbos.
Where?
B'kord d'kisim.
No, where?
Bibiri.
Bibiri. Okay, Bibiri is the name of a town. So, what's that case? A case like this. Rashi basically explains, but there were certain types of slippers, right, that in that town, they wouldn't wear, these kind of slippers, it's perfectly mutter to wear them on Shabbos. Why would there be a problem wearing certain types of slippers?
Carrying?
Good, Hotzah. You're going to be in a Rosh Hashanah, and your shoes will fall off because you're wearing these slippers that don't stay on well. These slippers are the kinds that, they're like Crocs, basically. They're not going to come off. But they've got the tsura, so to speak, of a slipper.
How would you care if they fell off?
Because you're going to pick them back up and put them back on again.
That's carrying.
And well, let's say you're in Rosh Hashanah Today we don't have this problem because we have Eruv. But yeah, that could be considered carrying. Picking up and putting it back on. It could be a problem. Okay?
You just put your foot in, that's carrying?
Don't worry about that. For right now, we're concerned about they're going to be over the Isser of Hotzah. That's what you have to worry about.
Slight here. Would you carry?
So the question is that but in Biri, what was the minhag?
So not carry.
No.
So carry.
Use these slippers.
Right, they didn't wear those slippers. Right? And guess who decided to show up again?
Yehuda.
Hillel and Yehuda.
Oh,
Okay? Umaisi Yehuda Behillel.
Is it from Basel? That's
Yeah, he asked that before. Go on.
and Yehuda's his brother.
Yeah. Go on.
Yehuda Behillel, but not Shabbat Gamliel. So Zuba Kordi Kisim Shabbos Aviri Le'eza Alein Hamadina. Amru Mimenu Lo Reinu Kach. Twice
Ushmatum.
1 week. Vishamtum.
And what they do, they took them off, and they made sure they're now. You got to be. It's a little unclear how it happened, but basically they said, "You're right. We're gonna hold like you." Okay, and they didn't. They took off those slippers, and I guess they were barefoot, whatever it was. Point is that they did not matter the minhag. Okay, so now you got again same lashon. They were loways on them. They said miyameinu lo ra'inu kach, and they didn't fight the minhag. Okay, last case. Now you actually have a different guy, but same family.
Love Dayan, V'lo Ratzu, Lomar Lahen, Torin.
Right, good. Okay, next case. Yoshvin al Safsli Nachor.
Al-Safsli Nachor, they sat on the bench of what?
Of a guy, a Nachri on Shabbos, okay?
It's a Nachor, just a guy?
A guy, but look at Rashi. Safsli, what are benches of Gayim? Rashi says...
Altars.
Shehain, no.
Shehain, Mochrin, Bahen, Schora, V'lo, Cheshinan...
Lechashada. Alright, so what it means like this. It means, that in those days... Let's say you go to the shuk, okay? I will use a modern day example. Let's go to the shuk. So let's say I went to the shuk, and on Shabbos, let's say I stood behind one of the stands, okay? Because I was just like in the mood to stand behind one of the stands, right? And let's assume it's an Arab shuk, and all the goyim are there working on Shabbos, okay? So the question is, can I stand behind the stand on Shabbos? Why would you think you couldn't? What does it look like?
Chazia, whatever.
Right, I'm right. So that's not a problem. Safsei Nachrim is similar. Safsei Nachrim is that they had these benches, and these benches were like salesman benches. Like Mochrim used special type of benches when they sat. So the question is, if I'm walking along and I see a bench because I'm tired of walking, can I sit down on that bench if it's a Safsal Nachrim? So Halacha says there's no problem whatsoever, no problem, without question, of sitting on those benches on Shabbos. But what happened? Except for in which city? Akko. Our Akko, by the way. Same Akko. In Akko, there was a minhag not to sit on those benches on Shabbos. What do people say? He sits on the bench, and then everyone says, what do they call it? They say, this is crazy. Right? They say, right, laws all love. Okay, laws all love. Kol Medina. Amru mi'ameinu lo ra'inu kach. So what do you do? Nishmat agabe karka. So he moved down and sat on the floor. Okay. So Ari's making good steps. Hold on. Ari's making good steps. Ari's saying you're right. Ari's saying that clearly. First of all, it's unclear at this point how they relate to the minhag. But remember, we don't care because it was already Mekabel, right? But they're concerned by in all these cases. There's a real concern that by undermining it, it's going to end up making them low. What do you call it? Mezalzel. Yeah. Yes. In other words, even though the minhag was created within the proper halachic way, and halachically speaking, yes, they say it's mutter, but the way to like it's usher. There's a point right now that Gemara is trying to bring out is they're loways. What do you mean loways? Because they look at Yehuda and Hillel and they say, you guys are over what?
Like love.
You're over love? That's how they're looking at them. They're saying you guys like over an Isser because they treat minhag like Torah. They treat the minhag like Torah.
It seems like that, though.
See, you got to understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to separate out the phenomenon minhag from the specific minhag itself. Minhag as a phenomenon is something that once it's mekabel, becomes part of the halachic mainstream of that city. In their eyes, they look at it as if it is halacha l'maisa. They don't have the sensitivity to differentiate minhag from normative halacha. Now you're going to say, is that a problem? Right? That's what
It sounds like toes.
Okay, so no, it can't be toes. The toes.
They say to them it's a love.
No. You're making a mistake. Toes is only insofar as the creation of minhag. But the institution of minhag is one that's rooted in a misconception of how they relate to the halachic system.
Right.
There's a difference. You understand that difference? It's not in the creation, it's not in the Kabbalah of the minhag. It's that the very institution is, once this thing becomes part of the mainstream, to them it's considered like halachic reality. But you see that the Chachamim are sensitive to it. They'll let that go because they're afraid if we go ahead and undermine it, it'll lead to being mizalzal in other areas of halacha.
Well, it sounds more like tell us now.
So the Gemara says, oh, very nice. So the Gemara says, so you're going to tell me, so you're going to say, B'nai Medina Sayam Nami, right? Okay, so you see, these people are commoners. They're Amoratzim. So it's not just limited to Kusai, it's everybody. So how do you say it's only Kusai? So the Gemara says, no. The Gemara says, it depends what case you're talking about. Kevon de lo shchichi rabbanan gabayu kikusim dame. No, so things like this. This is the next fact, okay? A lot of missing facts here. Next fact. The Gemara is saying that, okay, well, how do we differentiate Amoratzim, one kind of Amoratz from another kind of Amoratz? Very simple. If there are rabbis around. So if there are Amoratzim living in a city where there are Talmidei Chachamim, don't ask me how many, but there's some rabbinical presence. So then we're not as worried about them being mizalzal. But if they live in a town which is basically mass driven, okay, and there is no I don't know what that barometer is of presence, but there's no presence of Rabbanan, then we treat them like Kusai. Okay? We'll get back to that later. We're going to get back to that later why that's a difference. Okay? I just want to go a little further. So the Gemara says, now 1 second. Bishlama safslei narchem mishum demechsi kemechal memchar. So now follow us carefully. The Gemara says, why would the minhag of sitting on the benches not be considered minhag taos? Right, Yaakov not be considered minhag taos because you could see a relationship to mechal memchar there. In other words, they're not crazy. It's not a crazy minhag. It's not crazy to say don't sit on those kind of benches because what are they trying to do for themselves? What?
Marzai.
Right, they want to avoid. Yeah, exactly. No, he's right. They want to. I want to avoid any association with malacha. So even sitting on this bench, it's a workbench. I don't want to sit on a workbench on Shabbos. I want to make sure I'm as far removed from Mekach Memchar as possible. That's a nice thing. So we'll discuss this. Okay. Then the Gemara says, and the same thing applies by the case of what do you call it? Of Kurkadasin. Nami dilma mishtalfin v'asir lasanu arba amas v'shasarabim. So you can say the same thing by the slippers. Maybe you'll say, listen, even though the halacha says it's not a problem, maybe someone will commit the violation. So they're worried about that. But the Gemara says, 1 second. What about Rochsin, my taima, right? But how can you tell me that asering, forbidding brothers to bathe together, is legitimate minhag? How's that legitimate? The halacha says, right? Doesn't the Brisa say, "Im kol adam rochetz"? A man can bathe with anybody he wants to, obviously not women, right? Chutz me'aviv v'chama v'bal imo u'balachoso, right? So a person can bathe with anyone except for his father, okay? His father-in-law, his mother's husband, meaning his stepfather, and his brother-in-law. Okay, those four he cannot bathe with. Why? So Rashi explains: if you bathe with your father, right, this is what I want you guys to work on later. There's another point I want to bring out, and I want you to work on this later. But if you bathe with your father, so when you see him naked, you're going to nizkar shemisham yatsa. You're going to see his genitals, and you're going to say, "Oh, I came from there." Okay. Nosan libo lehirhor, and he's going to think inappropriate thoughts. V'chein mechamav, and same with your father-in-law, right? Nosan libo she yatsa ishta mikan. You're going to think, oh, my wife came from there, okay? V'chein ba'alachoso nami ika yehora, and same with your brother-in-law, okay? And again, that's one more step because you're going to think about your sister. No, because it's your brother-in-law. So you're thinking about your sister.
What exactly is the inappropriate thought?
Oh, we'll get to that.
It really is.
Hold on. Right.
I came from there.
Okay. Rav Yehuda says no. One second. Rav Yehuda says it's matir. Rav Yehuda says it's mutter as long as you're doing it for kavod. Meaning, let's say my father says, "Can you give me a hand? I really need a hand with bringing some shampoo." Okay, and you want to take a shower also, and if it's a chance to mechabed your father, then it's mutter. All right, hold off on the machlokas for a second. Hold off. Okay. So the Gemara then says, and where it says, okay, the Gemara says, once I lost the spot, the Gemara says, right? So what do? They were very smart. They made this Gezerah brothers based on what? They said, I can't bathe with my father. I can't bathe with my father-in-law. I can't bathe with my brother-in-law. Drop off brother-in-law, drop off in-law, and what do you have left?
I want to stay as far away as possible.
Brother, okay? Oh. So this is the other point I want to bring out. Okay, what is the mistake they're making there? Okay, what's the error they make by all these cases? There's
All?
all of them.
They
This is
never
the.
say anything
Well, say
except
again.
wrong,
There, but how?
Doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. Just wait a second. Wait.
Stays far away. Come on.
The fact is that on the one hand we're saying that they're going ahead and they're being machmir on themselves, right? They're saying, "Oh, I can't bathe with my brother because we see a previous thing by father, sister, and father-in-law. I'm not going to sit on the Safshlei Nachari because I'm concerned about the fact that it's associated with Mekach Memchar, and we see other areas that the Chachamim prohibit in Mekach Memchar. So we'll just take that and extend it to here. And same with the slippers. What's the problem with that? There's a problem there. There's something wrong with that because you see, halacha doesn't like minhag, and this is telling you. This Gemara now is telling you why they don't like minhag. What's the error that the people are making? Why did the Chachamim come up with this? Remember you said before, what makes the Chacham different? Which was saying, you said before, why is the Chacham different? Right? Because I said he's involved in hara. He's involved in the creation of halacha. So what? Doesn't he share the same objective as the Hamon?
They might know
right?
it's mutter.
What do they think about how you got to put yourself in their mind. How do they think? They see, there are 3 people that you can't bathe with, right? Now, why not? Naturally speaking, those are all sound like chumras. So we're just going to extend the sphere to one more.
No, I didn't even say they went the other way. That was the problem.
No, they're saying there's one more person you can't bathe with, brother as well, right? But the thing is like this: what's their concern? Their thinking is that the reason why I can't bathe with all these people is because of Mishkav Zachar. And since the Chazal are being machmir, we'll be machmir as well. We'll just extend the chumrah. That's their thinking. But what they don't understand is, just like you said before, the conceptual underpinnings. You're not worried about Mishkav Zachar. That's not why you can't bathe with your father. It has nothing to do with Mishkav Zachar. There's nothing to do with Mishkav. They're not worried about homosexual relations with your father. That's not what they're worried about. What are they worried about?
Her.
Well, okay, but what's the problem?
What kind of hearer?
What's the problem with the hearer? It's not a hearer in sexual thinking per se. What's the problem with the hearer? Just think.
Your father's couple.
There you go. It's a bizayon. It has nothing to do with this. It's a bizayon. So what are they missing? They don't understand how the halachic system works.
Right.
They think, if Chazal are machmir in all these areas, isn't it just natural to extend the chumrah to one more thing?
Right.
That's just like mafresh orez. You see, on the one hand, mafresh orez, you're right. Their objective, their overall generic objective is we want to be better in shmiras mitzvos. But they're doing it because they say to themselves, we see stringencies in all these areas. Wouldn't Chachamim want us to? Isn't the natural process just to extend the chumrah? That's not how halacha works. The Gemara tells you all these things are mutter. What do you mean they're mutter? It means that they're not just a result of chumras and kulas. They're conceptual ideas. So this is nothing, and this is why the brother's case is the perfect case. It has nothing to do with sexual promiscuity or mishkav zachar. Nothing to do with that. It has to do with in being bizayon to your father or your brother. Again, through your brother-in-law, you think about your father. That's not what they were thinking. They said, brother-in-law, drop off the in-law, brother as well. So that's So that's the problem. But because they relate to it as being a chumrah, right? That's why it's so difficult for them to get rid of it. They see Yehuda and Hillel, and they say, they're lowies on them. Why? Because in their minds, just like this is usher, what's the difference between this isser and this isser? Nothing. But that to them they say, no. What are they doing? You're missing the point. They think we are doing exactly what the Chachamim do. The Chachamim go ahead and say these 3 guys are usher. We're going to say, based on your logic, this guy should be usher as well. So they're thinking that they understand how Chazal come up with halacha, but they have no clue whatsoever. To review the tension, it's an unbelievable thing that I think the Gemara is telling us. The tension is phenomenal. On the one hand, there's this desire to improve shmiras and mitzvos. They want to adhere to the system in a better way. No, they do, because when they say to themselves, listen. They're saying we want to be mafresh orez. Why? Challah from Orez. Why? Because it will help us when it comes to Dagan. That's a very noble objective. That my heart's fluttering a little bit just hearing that. It's very nice. So that's the objective is there. But the mechanism of bringing it about is what's suspect. Why? This is the why part. This is the part we couldn't answer before. Because what they're doing is they misunderstand. They have no insight into how the halachic system works. They think we're going to be machmer. We're just going to react to it. But that's not how these things are developed. They're conceptual categories, not just being machmer. A siyag, we use the term siyag as a protection. Yeah. That just sounds like you're being machmer. It's not machmer. Everything is categorically defined. So because they lack that means, that's what a chacham is. What gives the right for a chacham to be a baal hara? It means that when he develops a takana, he's not just reacting to something. Rather, it's a thought-out conceptual idea, and then it's applied to the halachic system. That's what gives it legitimacy. But what they're doing is they're just extending chumrah. In their mind, this is how Chazal work. So that's the flaw in the minhag. That's why the minhag can never register as a real thing in the halachic system. It can't be a kiyum. How can it be a kiyum? It can never be a kiyum because ultimately, so they're rejecting the halachic process. See, on the one hand, they want to be better Jews, as you say, they want to be better. But on the other hand, they're doing it in a way that is not the way halacha develops.
Show me another mitzvah.
No, great, you said it perfectly. We know this is mutter. The Chachamim said it's mutter, but right, exactly. Like we want to make a machmer for ourselves. We're going to enter into the halachic stream and make this machmer as well. That's what it means. They know it's mutter. They know because they know the halacha. They know it, but they want to make this asa for ourselves. So on the one hand, it sounds great, objective, better adherence to mitzvos. On the other hand, though, that's not how the halachic system works. It doesn't. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Also.